Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
The Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's time again for another Word Balloon Live, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Man, it's been forever, Jason Aaron, but it's great to see you.
How's it going, John? It has been a while.
Dude, I've stacked up all my various country music new awareness to talk to you about for literally years. Have we talked about that Cinemax show, Tales from the Tour Bus?
I don't think so. I don't know what that is.
Okay, it's Mike Judge. And
sure.
The first season is all crazy stories about country music stars, Johnny Paycheck and Merle Haggard. And I mean, seriously, you would love this. It's on, you have HBO Go. We were talking about streamers that we have.
Yeah.
It's on Cinemax's channel. Jace, the first season is country. The second season is hip hop and R&B. And they talk to Porter Wagner's costume guy and hairstylists that are on the tour and road managers and stuff. And seriously, they are insane stories. And, musicians on the road, whether they're punk rockers, regular rockers,
sure,
country or R&B, there are some amazing stories about some people out of control.
No, I'm down for any of that. I haven't heard of that. I'll check it out. But I love any of the stories from those, old classic country guys. I feel like I watch that Ken Burns country music doc probably every 5 months. I'll pop it in and watch. I've watched it, about 5-6 times now.
Jason, I bought it.
Even 6 times. Oh, did you? Good.
I really did. Yeah.
Even on the 6th time, the Hank Williams episode still makes me cry. I cry every time. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about Hank that just, messes me up. It touches me in some weird deep place that didn't previously know existed till I heard Hank the first time.
All right, I'm going to admit a free idea that I've, again, because God only knows would I'd ever find an artist willing to draw this, but I would love to do a set in the 50s. He made it to the early 50s, didn't he? Or maybe it was the 40s.
No, it was the 50s, yeah.
Okay,
I think so.
okay.
Yeah.
I would want to do a weird Western supernatural thing with Hank Williams Sr. and Lefty Frizzell like that they're on this weird tour of all these weird little out of the way honky talks, and they're fighting vampires and werewolves and whatever crazy shit. Seriously, because I am fascinated by their stories, and also the country music thing in particular. It really is the story of radio as much as it was country music, and that's I'm like,
Sure.
I was hanging on every word, and all the recording companies that popped up and everything. Goddamn, seriously, unbelievable Ken Burns documentary.
Yeah, sure. The stories about those, border blaster radio stations where the giant antennas where, kids could get the stations on their fillings if you lived in that neighborhood. Yeah, just crazy powerful antennas.
Absolutely. And Wolfman Jack's radio station, which was like just south of the border in Mexico, they would still do 100,000 watt stations and stuff. So you got it, all over the country. I mean, I knew the rock and roll stories, so that's why I was really interested to hear the country stories, decades before rock and roll, that they were doing the same stuff. Or all the snake oil salesmen that owned radio stations and stuff,
Sure. Sure. Yes, yeah, all the crazy crap they were peddling. Yeah, I mean, even if you're not a huge country fan, like if you don't think of yourself as a country music fan, I so highly recommend that Ken Burns doc. I mean, like any of the documentaries he does, they're so, especially if you're an American, I think you're going to find them interesting in some. I'm not a baseball guy, but I like the baseball one.
Sure.
But that country, the country one is so good, and I love that it starts with the whole thing starts with a Thomas Hart Benton painting, and it was not too long ago, like within the last year, where I went to his house for the first time. Because Thomas Hart Benton was a Kansas City guy. He was a Kansas City painter. I didn't really know of him until I moved here, and our local art museum's filled with his stuff.
That's great.
And one of my favorite like dive bars here has his Persephone above the bar, which I love.
That's amazing.
I got to go to his house, which is it's pretty much exactly the same as when he died, because his wife died not too much after he did in the 70s, I think. So everything's exactly the same. So all their books are on the shelves. Their stuff's still in the bedroom. His studio is still full of his stuff. Like it's wild. I loved it. I mean, I love going to any kind of creator space like that, artist writer space. I still remember when I went to William Faulkner's house in Oxford, Mississippi, blew me away because his is the same. It's kind of run down, but it was the same thing. Like he had written notes on the wall in one room, and his boots were next to the bed, still caked in dried mud.
That's
so
great.
I love that stuff. So, but yeah, that Thomas Hart Benton painting is a great way to start that documentary, because it talks about like, where did this music come from, and like the banjo comes from an instrument from Africa, and then you combine that with like all these European folk songs, and that all mixes together, and you wind up with country music.
I've loved those Dolly Parton albums that she's made in the last few years, where she's gone back to the Irish folk songs and stuff. And
sure,
seriously, man, amazing stories in that documentary, and it's amazing. Well, you're in the midst of an incredible run on Avengers, and I got to tell you, man, there have been a lot of great stories that I've really appreciated. I really, in recent months, love the Moon Knight Khonshu story in particular, and certainly we're still in the midst of the Phoenix story and the big reveal that could she be Thor's mother? I love that. That's fantastic, man. That's a great little wrinkle you put in there. And of course, I'm sure people are chomping at the bit, and we'll be talking about Heroes Reborn and your plans for that. Is goddamn, again, this run, like many of your runs, you've been planting these seeds since your first issue of Avengers, haven't you?
Sure. Well, I mean, some of these seeds, go back before Avengers, go back into my Thor run. With the what point did I first show? Was in the Thor Generations one shot. I think is where I first showed that Odin and the Phoenix had a past, and we've seen kind of when Jane Foster Thor fought against the Phoenix and Odin's son was there. You know, back when he was unworthy, we saw that there was some kind of connection between Thor and the Phoenix that Jane didn't understand. She wondered if they used to date. She didn't understand, like, what is, like I can tell there's some feelings there that maybe even the Phoenix doesn't understand. So the idea that there's some kind of connection there is, you know, again, I planted seeds for that 5 years ago, however long ago that was, a long time ago.
That's outstanding.
And you saw, you know, I kind of introduced the prehistoric Avengers stuff, you know, before I was done on Thor, that showed up in the Marvel Legacy one shot. Kind of grew out of I did an arc of Thor where I think a couple arcs where we flashed back and showed, you know, we did all these different young Thor stories, and we started to show him like interacting with different superpowered characters in the Viking Age. So we saw like this kind of big hulked out Viking guy, and there was a tease of a Native American Ghost Rider and an Atlantean. I think I can't remember which ones we showed and which ones we kind of teased, and cave paintings.
Yes, those are great, by the way, man. Hey, Melon.
But that all kind of. Oh, hey, Kevin. That all kind of grew into the prehistoric Avengers stuff, and then, you know, I don't know. I'm still building on all this stuff. If you go back and look at King Thor #4, my final Thor story, there were a bunch of teases in that, some of which I'm just now getting to. Right? Yeah, that's King Thor #1.
I understood. I'm just throwing it up there because I have a King Thor.
Yeah. But if you, I don't know. I don't want to say too much, but there's one of those I'm getting to in a big way by the end of this year.
Very cool.
So yeah, I like doing that, you know, kind of throwing shit out there. And I mean, I think Thor was the first time I felt sort of the confidence to do that, just to feel like, okay, I've kind of been here long enough. Like, I feel like I can sort of lay claim to this, just say, all right, I'm going to be on this book until I'm done, or, you know, you guys just take it away from me. And thankfully nobody took it away from me. And so I got to write with that confidence of like, you know, it may take me 5 years to get back around to this, but it's going to take a while to lay the tracks, but I'm just going to do it like I'm going to get that time. And thankfully I did. So, yeah, all that in my mind, all that kind of rolled into Avengers, and we'll start to see more of those connections especially as we get to Avengers #50, which is coming.
Yeah.
50/750.
So during Heroes Reborn, will the Avengers story still continue as well, or how does that work?
No, there's no Avengers book for those months. So Heroes Reborn is only 2 months. It's
okay.
You know, it's a rapid fire space. It's a weekly book, so it's 8 issues in 2 months. And so there's no Avengers for those 2 months because the Avengers don't exist.
Right.
I think there's no Avengers team book, and I think most of those solo books, some of them disappear for part of that time. I can't remember exactly.
How many parts is 2 months? How many parts in Heroes Reborn?
8.
Okay,
8 in the main book. So it's kind of
and then all the one shots or whatever, or limited series. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it as both. I mean, it's kind of, you know, it's Heroes Reborn 1 through 7, and then Heroes Return #1. I wrote it as a group of 8 one-shots. Or initially it was going to be, actually, it would have been, you would have had like an inciting incident in the pages of Avengers and then do these one-shots. So they read very much like one-shots that kind of string together. That first issue, Heroes Reborn #1, which comes out, I think, in like 2 weeks.
Oh, is it in 2 weeks? I thought it was next week, but maybe it is in 2 weeks. Okay.
I don't remember what day it is anymore.
Early May, definitely, though, regardless.
Yeah. It's next week. You're right.
Oh, okay.
I'm still stuck in last week.
Well, yes. And again, you're writing in advance, obviously, so no, I can appreciate you don't know the street dates of things. That's okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's 8 of them in 2 months, so I wrote them I wrote them, you know, months ago.
Let me pull out some great conversation that already people are popping up here. Dave says you're the best writer Marvel has. Avengers is great.
Cheers. Thanks, Dave.
Very nice. And he also says he says please don't leave the book. And yeah, I hear you, man. So
what? Please don't ever leave the book. Well, I have to leave at some point. I mean, I'm not.
Do you want to do like 100 issues? I mean, you're close to 50. I mean, like I don't know how big your stories you've got going. Every
I don't. I mean, I don't want to. I've got an idea. I don't want to tell. I don't want to say exactly like, yeah, I'm going to do this many issues.
Right, no problem.
No, but I still got plans. Like I said, everything right now it's kind of building towards 50, and once we get closer to that, you'll start to see the signs of the big things that are coming out of that.
Understood. And yeah, Zach's pumped for Heroes Reborn. And where's the one? Here it is. Liam says he's excited. Looks like a what if event to me. Absolutely, definitely. We're going to throw the images back up of the big widescreen promotional posters that they made. Who drew those?
Yeah.
Or are those a collage of various covers? Obviously,
I don't know. There's a lot of different ones. There's Carlos Pacheco's done a bunch of promo images. The shit, I can't remember who did that one. Yeah, that's Lanil. Yeah, who did that. Those are like the covers for the actual issues that connect together. So that first issue, yeah, that's the Carlos stuff. The first issue, the one that comes out next week, is sort of like you wake up and you're in this new like you said, what if kind of world, and it introduces all the different characters, all the good guys, all the main bad guys, gives you sort of a tease of what the landscape is. With that issue 2, each issue focuses on a different one of those squadron members. So issue 2 is a Hyperion issue, and it's basically like, if you imagine this is what the Marvel Universe looks like now, this version of it with the Squadron Supreme at the center, it is now and has always been that way. So this is basically like issue number 742 of the Hyperion book that has been running. So we tease a lot of his past adventures. Some of the great classic stories from Marvel history didn't go quite the same because when Galactus first showed up to Earth, there was no Fantastic Four. So how did that story play out? Well, we tease a lot of that kind of stuff in these individual issues. So each one of those has a different artist, focuses on a different one of the characters. And they also have backup stories. Each of the backups drawn by Ed McGuinness that tell the stories of Blade, as he's one of the only guys who remembers that this is not right, and he starts going around trying to find is there anybody else who is like me who remembers. So basically trying to put the Avengers back together. So that story goes through the backups as we get those main stories. And again, like they're very much telling a story in and of itself in that issue, also teasing a lot of those past adventures, past enemies, past allies, and then building towards the issue 7 focuses on the Squadron as a group. And then that last one is, as you can guess, is sort of these reformed Avengers button heads with the Squadron in a big epic oversized throwdown drawn by Ed McGuinness. So I think probably this week you'll start to see more of the preview art. I'm hoping they'll start getting more of the art out for these individual issues because each one of them is drawn by different creators. Some of them I've worked with before, like Ed, of course, and R.M. Guerra is drawing the Nighthawk issue. Guerra, who I worked with on Scalped and The Goddamned. Who else? James Stocco, who I've never worked with, who I'm crazy excited. He does the Dr. Spectrum. So he's doing the crazy cosmic.
That's book, a great idea. That's fantastic. Sure.
Which is just absolutely insane, as you can imagine. Every time I would get a page of that in my email, I would just sit there and giggle like a child. So I think you'll start to see this week more of that preview art coming out, showing off
That's awesome.
Because it's a really amazing group of artists.
Here, Jose has an interesting question. How long has the Squadron Supreme been part of your Marvel plans? You seem to have written out a lot of the Squadron history, and I love how they've rebooted under your gun. Yeah, I loved in particular during the Phoenix story and everything, Hyperion kind of wrestling with the power of the Phoenix and stuff. I thought that was really a nice wrinkle as well.
Yeah, he didn't like that it made him too open-minded. He had to shut that down. Yeah, the Squadron had kind of been there from pretty quick in my Avengers run. They were a big part of, or they showed up, I think, in issue 700, which was issue 10, I believe. And then they've been popping up again and again. I did an issue during War of the Realms that focused on them, which I had a lot of fun with, and made it clear like these are new versions of these characters that also harken back to some of the classic versions of these characters, and they are good guys in their eyes, but they are very much, they're not just the Squadron Supreme, they're the Squadron Supreme of America. So in that issue, they're frost giants invade Washington D.C. and the Squadron are fighting them off, and they literally chase them to the Canadian border and say, "All right,
it's your problem.
They're Canada's problem now."
Call in Alpha Flight.
That's all they give. Right, exactly. I think there's even an Alpha Flight joke in there. That's all they care about. So they're a different kind of squadron than we've seen before, and it's basically the same versions of those characters in this Heroes Reborn. They are very militantly all-American superheroes.
Gee, I wonder what made you think of that. That's amazing. That's great, Jace. And also, God, I've loved seeing Nighthawk and T'Challa go back and forth in your Avengers run too.
Yeah. I like the idea of doing the fight we saw between those two guys and Enter the Phoenix. There's a lot of the fighting before they ever get to like throwing punches of just them, the different ways they can come at each other. Because Nighthawk is he's in Congress, so he's a congressman by day, Nighthawk by night.
Right.
So I like
you had him as
that
ambassador. You had him as ambassador of Wakanda.
That's right. We find out there that he's the brand new ambassador to Wakanda. Because the Avengers are not very popular with in the States because they're their chairman is a foreign head of state, basically with the Black Panther. So I really like writing Panther and Nighthawk together. So I think you can tell I like writing Nighthawk from the Nighthawk issue, which I was actually just before I logged on was doing the lettering draft of because it goes to print this week. So that's the one that R.M. Guerra draws.
Understood. Jose also says Blade and Ghost Rider's interactions have been my favorite of the recent Avengers issues. I will throw on there as well during the Khonshu. The way you wrote in Moon Knight, that was just excellent, and it was such a great story, and it was really cool seeing Moon Knight of all people take the Avengers down to get all the totems for Khonshu.
Thanks. Yeah, I've always been a big Moon Knight fan. I like that idea of Moon Knight showing up and beating the shit out of all the Avengers. Not necessarily something he could do every day. Like it's sort of the right moment in time. And we get find out that connection he has to Thor's hammer, or that the hammer, the Uru is basically chunks of the original moon that existed.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I had a lot of fun with that, with him beating the shit out of the Avengers and fighting Iron Fist too. I love when I get to do like an old school. I loved Matt Fraction and Ed Brubaker's Iron Fist back in the day. And I got to I wrote one Fat Cobra one shot back then.
Yes,
I always loved doing. So anytime I can kind of harken back to that stuff, I'm all for it.
That's great. And seriously, Jason, you find these new uses for heroes and villains. And again, every arc of the Avengers is like this epic story, and it really is worthy of the Avengers having to come through and face whatever you throw at them.
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, I want
Sure.
every arc of this to feel like, oh, it could be an event. It basically is an event. We just don't always have tie-in issues. Which I know I see. I've seen comments on both sides of some people say, when you do a story that big, it doesn't feel real if you don't see it reflected in other books. But at the same time, people complain when you do a story that's so big that it appears in all the other books. So there's a line there somewhere in the middle. I think going forward with Avengers, you'll see us trying to be more reflective of some of the other titles. It's hard at times. Like, I'm a huge fan of what Ta-Nehisi's been doing in Black Panther and Captain America, and it's some of that with Avengers is sort of like you just kind of need to stay out of the way and you connect when you're able to, because Panther was off in space for most of the Black Panther story, and Cap was in prison for part of his. So it's somebody who's been on the opposite side of that as doing Thor. You kind of want to tell your story, and then you let those things interplay when they can. So I think in Avengers, I'll both be trying to do more of that, of more connecting, and in a way be doing less, which it will be more obvious as we move along. But yes, I want every arc of that should feel like, oh shit, this is all hands on deck, and so that's what I'm always going for with whatever the thread or the challenge is.
Nathan has an interesting comment. He says, "For me, it's about how often the huge events happen. I'm just sick of there being a massive event every month."
Well, I mean, I think there are always people who feel that way, but companies keep doing events because they still sell. People like those kind of big stories, and I mean, I get it as somebody who's read those and written those. It's fun to do those. I think with Avengers, it's me trying to do that in a way where, again, even if you don't read any of the books, like you get that event here, arc after arc, and something that I want to keep, again, still going bigger as we go, like not going smaller, like getting bigger and bigger as we go.
Well, and also the way you shoehorn in these other characters. In fact, Zach says he's so happy that you threw Gorilla Man in there, and I agree with that. And everybody that you throw in, obviously Echo, a very big part right now of the Phoenix story, and just all these other characters. Where that's great, because honestly, that's what I always loved about when Jeff Johns and everybody was doing JSA, and it really seemed like they were really pulling heroes from all over the place. And the Avengers should be that way as well, in terms of the door should be open. And again, Blade and Ghost Rider. I forget if I didn't already do that. That's another comment that someone made, and it's like, they're amazing.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I will say I love Gorilla Man too. I will say Javier Garrón, who drew the last couple arcs. He's drawing the World War She-Hulk arc that comes out after Heroes Reborn. He just recently turned in my favorite Gorilla Man page ever. So you got that to look forward to.
That's great. Now, Zach is asking if there's anything you could tease about World War She-Hulk.
Well, I mean, kind of what I've said before is that, some of it spins out of Enter the Phoenix, what happened there. Some of it is sort of the everything that's been building with Jennifer since Avengers #1. The Russians are a big part of it. The Russian Winter Guard. It's a darker story. Things just in general start to take a darker turn. This is more like it's not a world war in the same way that the World War Hulk was, where it's sort of Hulk taking on all the heroes of the Marvel universe. This is not that kind of story. This is more like a modern day global conflict, and that the Russians come after She-Hulk, take her into custody, and leads to some very dark things that pulls together a lot of the different threads of the book that have been in play for a while now. Because I've set up tried to set up a lot of different like global hotspots, right? Like like I said, we've done a lot of different big arcs. Some of them are villains who pop up and go away, but a lot of it has been been about building ongoing threats, right? So I wanted, like, set up Atlantis. Like, okay, this is the sort of status quo of Atlantis, and that's an antagonistic relationship that is not just, we're going to invade and get beat. Like, it's an ongoing thing. The Russian Winter Guard have been another part of that. Stuff with the vampires.
Yeah.
Giving them their own country. So it's some of that stuff is getting tied up. I don't say tied up like I'm finishing it off, but it's all getting tangled up together in World War She-Hulk. So it's more like a, globe-trotting espionage, action-driven story than some of the ones we've done before, and leads right into issue 50.
Very cool, man. I'll tell you, the way that modern writers have been using Dracula. And it's great that they've really made him a part of the Marvel universe, as he should be. I mean, he should be one of the biggest bads. And I loved your issue in particular when we were looking at the Vampire Nation and Blade and everything that's coming. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm a even before the Blade movies, like, I'm an old school Tomb of Dracula fan. That's one of my favorite Marvel books ever. So I've always wanted to try to do something with Dracula to sort of put him back in prominence. And it's hard. I think you hear the name Dracula and you already have so many preconceived notions. So we're still kind of working to establish, like, what does that Vampire Nation look like? The previous time we saw it is sort of like Fight Club, where it's like you saw these vampires showing up and like on Dracula's doorstep in Chernobyl and basically being turned away, and he was really looking to see, like, which of them are going to sit there until the sun starts to come up, and they're like, I want to smell their flesh burning before I'm going to say, okay, you can come in. Wow. So he's just sort of building, everything he did was kind of about purging the weakest members of the vampire race, and really, as we saw in the most recent issue of Avengers, kind of coming out of King in Black, Dracula was basically using the fact that the vampires, fought to help the rest of the world against Null as a way to say, okay, now we want our own country. And it worked. They got it. So now but so the next step will be show, like, what does that look like? What is life like in the Vampire Nation? So I'm excited to get to that.
Honestly, that's the thing, man. No, really, your conflicts are creating these really interesting political issues in the various parts of the Marvel universe. I think it's awesome. Dean Haspiel, Jason's one of the best writers.
Oh, hey, Dean.
Said. How about that? Very nice.
Cheers.
Absolutely.
Dean's great.
And mentioning King in Black, John wants to know any plans to work with Donnie in the future, Donnie Cates.
We've talked about doing different things, but nothing's quite lined up yet. But yeah, I'm sure we will at some point or another. I mean, I think you can see, we play off each other's stuff in different ways time to time. So
totally.
I'm a huge fan of what Donnie's been doing on Thor.
Agreed. And also, Jason, you mentioned it earlier in terms of people not liking, events and things like that or whatever. I always think a lot of your writing, you really strike a great balance. And I always go back to your Thor run, because on the one hand, Jane was Thor, but you didn't abandon the Odin son, and he still had a very important part. And I think sometimes, I guess not so much with events, but just in terms of how people handle legacy characters and not neglecting the original core of the Marvel Universe and stuff. I mean, there was a lot of experimentation over the last few years, and I think everyone appreciates the introduction of new legacy characters and new opportunities for characters that have been around, like Jane and Amadeus Cho and some of these others that have kind of taken the next step. But it's like, yeah, let's do that, but don't. Whenever they take the main hero, or the original, not the main hero, but the original off screen, or off stage, it's like, oh man, I still kind of want to see what, like what Steve's doing when Falcon is Captain America, for example, things like that.
Well, it's that's a lot to talk about. It's a hard. I mean, speaking from all different sides of that, like clearly legacy is a big part of everything I'm doing in Avengers, and they were showing like some of these legacies go back to to 1 million years ago.
Absolutely.
I love playing with all that. With Thor, I became a huge Thor fan over the course of those 7 years.
Wow, 7 years.
You won't find many bigger Thor fans than me. I'm pretty confident in saying I own more hammers than more non-functional, like not actual hammers you can do work with. Although I do have 2 of the Thor hammer toolboxes. I also have those, but there's a ridiculous number. I mean, there's Thor statues right here in front of me. I'm a huge fan of old school classic Thor, and clearly enjoy doing a lot of those stories. Still enjoy writing him. To do the story like we did with Jane Foster, yes. On the one hand, I had a very particular story I wanted to tell with Thor Odin's son. Once he was unworthy, like what effect does that have on him? At the same time, that opens the door for someone else to come in. To do the story that we did, to do it the right way, he couldn't be Thor during that period, right? Like it wasn't about Jane Foster becoming Thunderstrike to Thor. It was about her being a character going from the supporting role in the outskirts of this universe that she'd been in, since basically Thor's second appearance, right? Was her first appearance. She'd been there the whole time.
Yep.
This is about her becoming the center of that world, right? It was not a Dick Grayson as Nightwing story. This was a Dick Grayson as Batman story, which are 2 different kind of stories.
Yep.
So to do that story with her, she was Thor for a period there. He was not, he was
unworthy,
the unworthy Thor, the Odin son. I very much did not want to do 2 ongoing books, like one with each person, then becomes a competition of which one sells better. And
totally.
Like we did the Unworthy Thor miniseries with Olivier, which was a blast, but it was very much, that's a mini, and Jane is still Thor for this period. And I still say and insist, and will insist until the day I die, that on the one hand, my Thor story did not stop. There was one long Thor story I was telling. The person who was holding the hammer changed for a period of time. And if anything, that Jane Foster story was probably the most Thor of any Thor story I did. It was most definitely the most Marvel of any story I did, because it had so many throwbacks to the sort of classic conceits of the Marvel stories, right? Like, I mean, it's the original setup for Thor from that first issue. First issue was Don Blake goes in and, this like crippled doctor who picks up this hammer is transformed into the God of Thunder. And, later Stan and Jack retconned their own work and changed that, but that was the original setup. So we had Jane Foster, who was dealing with cancer in her mortal life, right, which is killing her, dealing with these very real world problems. Then she gets to pick up this hammer and be transformed by it because of that, the power of that enchantment, that inscription, which was on there in, Thor's first appearance. She gets to fly around, punch gods in the face. And it's the fact that she's doing that she's picking up that hammer and transforming, it's what's killing her. It's making her, it's neutralizing the effects of her cancer treatment. So every time she comes back, she's sicker. So being Thor to help save the world is literally killing her. And, little things like she's got a secret identity. If she's away from the hammer for too long, she'd start to change back. Like that was a classic Marvel story. I think more so than anything I've done in, however 12 years, however the hell long I've been here. So at this point, it just makes me angry when anyone says that's not a Thor story. I say, fuck you. You haven't read enough Thor comics.
No. Yeah.
And again, even beyond that, it is the most Marvel story maybe I'll ever do. Like it's hard to pull all those kind of threads together. And it's the thing I'm probably most proud of from my time at Marvel. One of the things I'm most proud of from my 15 years in comics in general. And they're about to they're making a movie of it right as we speak. So I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it.
No, I understand. And speaking of the movie, this Jose wanted to know: do you have a role in the next Thor movie? I guess the actual. Do you have a cameo? And are you also involved in any way in that story? Well, obviously they're taking stuff from your run, I would assume, in this story. But yeah, I don't know how much you could talk about the Thor film.
Well, I mean, there's nothing I can talk about. I mean, no, I'm not involved. I mean, I've talked to Taika, but that's about it. Like know some of what they're doing. Sounds super cool. No, nobody's called me for my cameo yet, but if they need somebody to be like, biker number 3 in a bar that Jane punches in the face, I would happily be that guy.
I got to be honest, Jace, your COVID beard isn't that much different than normal Jason Aaron beard.
Yeah, I mean, this was, my pre-COVID beard too. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say, man. Here, I'm going to zoom in. There we go.
I mean, it has, I haven't been for like a real professional beard trim since the pandemic, so I'm definitely due for one of those.
Do you notice I'm flirting with the idea? I don't know.
Good for you. I can't.
Here, I'll zoom in a little bit. You might be able to see it a little better because it is sadly very gray.
Oh yeah. There you go.
Yeah,
just let it go, John. Just let it go.
I don't, dude. As I'm sure everyone sees, I'm scratching the shit out of my face, so I don't know.
You just got to grow it through that phase.
My nephew's got a beard that you'd be proud of, and he told me, he's like, you got to oil it, man. You got to like that'll reduce the issue as well.
Beard products help me too.
We'll see.
Don't give up. I haven't given up on you, John.
Hey man, you converted me on country music and appreciate it more. There's only so much I can do.
Now it's beards. Well, they they go hand in hand.
Oh, absolutely, man. Well, I literally, especially when I saw how white it was, I'm like, holy shit, I'm Kenny Rogers. I don't know how that happened, but here I am. By the way, I keep finding old video of his summer variety show he had when I think he was still with the first edition. And that stuff is amazing to watch.
What do you mean? What do you mean you keep finding it? Like you say that, like you stumble upon it.
Well, I didn't know it. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know he did that show. That's it's all on.
But I feel like you have to go looking for it. You're not just.
I suppose so. You're right. I don't know. It just popped up in my.
Just one of those like late night Wikipedia holes you fall down, and next thing you know, you're watching more Kenny Rogers variety show.
Well, and more so YouTube, but no, I totally will find myself in a YouTube rabbit hole that never ends, and it's like, what about this? What about that? So absolutely. All right, let me see here. What do we got? Oh, all right. Here's some praise for Thor. Your run on Thor. Ryan says you made him a Thor fan, which is awesome. And ChemDog says he's been collecting Thor since 398. Very, very good. Oh, thank you. All right, Deanie says my beard looks good. All right, great. Thank you. So now we need Jane Foster punching you as a random biker in the movie. Yeah, sure.
I'm
Why
down.
not? Are you? Go ahead.
I'd say I could be a biker. I could be a Viking, roadie for Metallica. Those are, if any of those factor in any way.
Among your moments in Thor, and I'm glad you're still like we still see glimpses of it, especially in this Avengers period where we're going from past, present, and future and everything. King Thor is such a great idea, and I mean, I really like, especially when he is old King Thor, and he's got his kids and everything, and the future look of the as the Norse gods and everything. I think that's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I loved writing all those versions of Thor. I think when I got to do Conan finally, whenever that was, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I think that's when I realized, like, oh, I was sort of doing some of that when I did Thor. I think that all goes back to when I got the Conan gig. Like, well, as soon as I got wind that Marvel was doing Conan, I basically called up CB and threatened to like fight anybody else that they would. I'm like, dude, I've been wanting to do this since I was 12. Like, I texted him a picture. Like, here's all the Conan, dog-eared paperbacks I read when I was 13 years old, still sitting 5 feet away from my desk. So I wanted to do that books for a long, long time. So when they agreed, that I didn't have to fight anybody and let me have it, I started, digging back into those Robert E. Howard stories again, and I realized, like, oh yeah, shit, I think that's why I did that in Thor, because that's one of the things that always struck me about those Howard stories is the very first story is a King Conan story, the Phoenix on the Sword. At least is the first one that was published, I think. So every time you'd pick up one of those, it's like, oh, he's a different age, different point in his timeline. He's in a different country. He's a thief. He's a pirate. He's a whatever. Like traces out this whole grand life over the course of these stories and jumped around, didn't write them or publish them in any sort of sequence. So I loved that as a kid. Like I loved anything like that gave me this sense of this grand epic world or life. So I think that's very much what I was going for when I came up with that first Thor story. I wanted to do something that showed, this guy's different than all the other heroes in the Marvel Universe because his adventures can play out over the course of thousands and thousands of years, on this grand stage that's so much bigger and more epic and grand than most of the other characters. So I think that all goes back to Howard. So that the only downside of that was that once I got Conan, I was like, well, shit, what do I do now? So if anything, it meant I had to go bigger, instead of with Thor, I was doing 3 periods of his life. With Conan, I said, I'm going to do a different one every issue. So we jumped around every issue to a different part of his life and still had a story that kind of built over the course of that. But that was very much my love letter to Robert E. Howard and the way I read those stories and how much they affected me as a kid.
My favorite Howard character is still the boxer, Sailor Costigan, the merchant marine that boxes. And I really think there's an opportunity to tell new Sailor Costigan stories and really tell foreign intrigue stories without, sadly, and when I say sadly, I mean in terms of the originals, it's a shame that there are so many kind of racial, lousy things in them. And I think there's an opportunity to reclaim the essence of the character and tell them with a fair balance to, being, a white guy in a foreign land and not knowing all the rules and facing more evolved, bad guys than what we got in the original Howard stories. And I won't deny a lot of it has to do with them just purely a boxing thing. But I just
sure.
But yeah,
maybe that'll happen. I don't know. The Conan rights holder guys are really great to work with.
Okay, cool. No issues in terms of what you wanted to do. They were cool with the stories you were coming up with.
Yeah, they've been really great. It's not a secret. I'm not spoiling an announcement or anything. I mean, we announced at the end of my Conan the Barbarian run that I would be back eventually to do King Conan. So that's, that would have originally have come out or started sometime last year, got pushed back a little bit, but
sure,
I've been working on that. I've been writing that. So I'm back doing more Conan and I love it. This is a different kind of story, obviously, than what I did the first time. Still, something that sort of jumps around in time a little bit, gives you a couple different points in Conan's life. I won't say too much about what it is until we do get ready to announce it, but
sure.
I really love it. It's Mahmood. It's the same team from Conan the Barbarian.
That's great.
I mean, that was, again, kind of goes back to what we announced. I've teased in Conan the Barbarian number 12. So
very cool.
Yeah, it's we're coming back to tell another story. And I hope I can continue to do that, in the same way Garth always goes back to telling a great Punisher story. I think I'd love to be able to come back and do more Conan from time to time.
That's cool. Is there a genre that you haven't done in Marvel? Would you want to, like, for instance, have you ever done a Marvel Western proper, and would you want to?
I have not. I mean, I've never really done a Western proper in anywhere, right? Like,
that's what I was trying to think of and rattle around. Like, no, I don't think so.
I don't think I have.
Yeah, I don't think you have either, but I just wondered if there was a Western story in you.
Yeah, I mean, I love Westerns, I feel like there should be somewhere. It's just a matter of, I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know. I don't know if I like a lot of those, Marvel Western characters, and I like the different kind of revisionist versions of them we've gotten over the years. I don't know that I have a big, Rawhide Kid or Two Gun Kid story in me, but maybe someday, sure.
Oh, we're idiots. Shame on us, Jason. As Ryan points out, yeah, Scout is kind of a espionage Western. Donnie, little Donnie Brasco meets the Rez,
Sure. There's a lot of, I wouldn't call Scalped a Western, but I think there's a lot of Western in its DNA. Sure. I mean, there's a lot of, Leone and Corbucci in there for sure. From on my end and on Guerra's end.
Yeah.
When Guerra draws like the American West, he's basically drawing, Spain where he lives, like where they shot all those Italian Westerns.
Absolutely. No, that dude again. What an amazing combination you guys were. That was terrific. And I was going to say regarding your Thor stuff, you and Assad Ribic were terrific. I am right. Didn't he draw God Killer and all the classic Thor stuff, the early stuff? Yeah.
Assad drew most of the God Butcher, and then he drew King Thor.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. Kind of from the get-go with the people artists I've gotten to work with.
No question.
And it continues. Again, this lineup on Heroes Reborn is amazing, and again, getting worked with Mahmood again. Like, I'm very, very fortunate.
I hear you, man. No, he's great. Jose also asks, this is interesting. Are you involved in the translation of your books? I read your stories in Spanish and in English, and you can't translate so many things without losing something, like the way Thor speaks. Interesting.
No, I never have been involved. I mean, I've gotten questions sometimes over the years from translators of just, usually it's like, what the hell is this phrase? Like, what does this mean? How do I translate? But no, I've never been, I mean, with Marvel, like I don't even see those. We don't even see those foreign editions. And
oh, wow.
If I go to a show somewhere overseas and people bring them to me to sign, it's usually the only time.
Wow.
So you create your own stuff. You have more control and I get to see that stuff more. But no, I've never been directly involved in the translations.
Are you working on any creator-own? I mean, do you have time right now to do creator-own?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the goddamn
right.
We're wrapping that up. That issue goes to print imminently.
Okay.
This week, next week, sometime soon. It's done. That's the end of the Virgin Brides. That story's done. Sea of Stars is the other one I do with co-write with Dennis Hopeless and with Stephen Green and Rico Renzi, and that next issue that we're just wrapped up. Should be going to print soon, and we'll be wrapping up like that series overall pretty soon.
Okay. Shame on me, Jason. I wasn't paying attention to Sea of Stars. Obviously, sci-fi book.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's we got one trade out. It's like a father and son get separated in space, and they kind of go off on two very different adventures. The kid's on he's literally swimming through space with a talking monkey and a dolphin and thinking this is amazing. And meanwhile, the father's going through hell he's basically going through the Revenant, in outer space where everything's trying to eat him and kill him, and he's trying desperately to find his kid. And then that's the first arc, and the second arc we see those adventures kind of start to come crashing together.
Interesting. Okay. Well, next time we talk, I'm going to catch up. Go on.
And more stuff beyond that I'm starting to work on that I can't talk about yet.
I can't remember the name of your Icon series, but I really liked it because it was really modern day
Men of Wrath. Yeah.
What was it again?
Men of Wrath. With Ron Carney. Yeah.
Yes. So I'd love to see more kind of men's adventures sort of stuff like that if it's in you.
Yeah, we did a nice hardcover of that at Image a couple of years ago. So there's a nice big hardcover of that out there. Yeah, I mean, the next creator-owned thing I'm working on, I don't want to say too much about it, but I'll say, I think it's unlike anything else I've ever done. So I like both, right? Like I did Scalp for 60 issues. You'll see me do more stuff like Scalp for sure.
Okay.
But I also want to do stuff that's very different from whatever I've done. I mean, I'm really proud of, one thing I'm proud of from my career is just, I've done a lot of different kinds of stuff. I think I've done some books that are like Scalped or like Punisher Max. I've done others, like
Wolverine
the X-Men. Right. So those are very different. Even the stuff I've done at Marvel, sometimes even in the same book, I liked with Wolverine, every arc or every series I was doing, you could do a completely different kind of story. So I like that. That's what I like as a reader. I like reading all different kinds of stuff. I consume all different genres and such. So that's what comes out of me is I don't ever want to have like well, I'm just this guy or I'm just that guy. I love it if I see it online and somebody criticizes me for like, well, he only does this kind of story. I'm like, I think that's funny because clearly you haven't read all these 8 stories over here I did. They're nothing like that. It's like, I like that somebody could, just like one of those and maybe the other ones aren't your thing. Anytime somebody comes up to me and they've got like a copy of Scalped and a copy of Wolverine and the X-Men and whatever, like, I love it. I love it if you can read all those different sort of things too.
Absolutely. No, I get that. I'm going to let Robert know because he asked if there's still going to be a King Conan story coming. Yeah, actually, you just missed us talking about it, Robert. So don't worry.
Yep, it's still coming.
So that's very cool. A couple people were asking about Southern Bastards. Got a couple questions in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, the not too much I can say. I've worked on Southern Bastards, doing more work on it. I would like to be able to tell you when you'll see it again, but can't as of right now. But believe me, like as soon as I can, as soon as I do have something to announce or talk about, I will scream it from the heavens.
Good.
But it's, I haven't forgotten about it. Hasn't suddenly become a project that is less personal to me, the way it's always been. Just not something I can announce just yet.
Understood. Zach says, and by the way, I love the way you've handled Doctor Strange in the Avengers. And he'd love for you to reunite with Chris Picciolo again someday soon. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I would work with Chris again on anything. I actually was messaging him the other day. It's been a blast to work with him on everything we've done. I think Wolverine the X-Men was the first thing, and then Doctor Strange. So I'm always up for it. Whatever he would want to do, I would be down for it.
Did you satisfy your Star Wars itch? Because I really loved what you were doing in Star Wars, and the one, in fact, I know we talked about it the last time we spoke. I really loved that Obi-Wan story you did of when he was, kind of sending Luke parts and kind of nudging him along, and Uncle Owen like being like, "Hey, back the fuck off! I am not going to let you ruin this kid the way his father got ruined." And I thought that was
Thanks.
a great
Yeah, I
story.
like all those Obi-Wan stories we did were really fun. I liked those. And Marvel put out a trade not too long ago that
Oh,
collected
awesome.
just all the Obi-Wan
Yeah.
like 1 and 2 issue stories that I did, which were a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, sure, I certainly scratched that itch in a big way. That an itch not just for Star Wars, but for like that classic original Star Wars. I loved being able to do this book. That the whole idea of it, what John Cassaday and I talked about, and everybody involved with that, is we wanted it to feel like you just walked out of the first showing of that original film, and somebody hands you that comic, and it's like this is the next chapter.
Yep.
And we got to do some big moments, putting Luke and Vader face to face, kind of right out of the gate, at the end of the first issue, and doing that moment where Vader hears the name Skywalker for the first time in connection to this kid who blew up the Death Star. I figured out a way to get Luke and Boba Fett into a fight, even though Luke couldn't actually see him. Getting Jabba and Vader together. So it did a lot of fun stuff in that. And it was like 30 some 40 issues, however, I
Wow.
can't remember however many I did, I think.
I didn't realize.
So I mean, it's certainly something I could go back to someday. If I did, it'd be different, right? Like we're not gonna go back and do kind of stories in that same time period. So I got to do so much of that. But yeah, I could always see going back to do something else. I really liked those stormtroopers we introduced, the Scar Squadron, who were, I wanted to do like these are guys who are like badass, like they're actually very competent stormtroopers, and a troop that was sort of like a GI Joe troop. So you'd have the big bazooka guy and the sniper guy and the leader who carried a lightsaber. So I'd always love to do something else with them, or who knows what. I don't know. I don't have any Star Wars plans or anything right now, but never say never.
This is why I'm glad I've got Marvel Unlimited. I'm gonna have to go and dig back and read some of the arcs that I missed, man.
Yeah, I can't remember how many issues I did. One of the last ones. So the last one's got R2 on the cover. Shit, I don't remember. I've done. Everything feels like it happened 10 years ago, anyways. This last year it's been a decade. So
has it? Honestly, how have you handled COVID and everything that's been going on?
I had my ups and downs, probably like most people. I think it was hard. Work was difficult. I remember thinking, a year or so ago, I go, well, this won't be so bad. I'll be able to read, right? Like I'll have more time to read and watch movies, and that did not work out. Like the reading part did not. I mean, I feel like now I'm starting to catch up on some of my reading, but I don't know. It's just seemed hard to give a shit, I guess, about a lot of that stuff for a while, and hard to focus. But I feel good. I think coming into this year and the stuff I've been writing this year, I feel more focused and, on the one hand, busier. But I don't know, just in a much better headspace, I guess.
I understand. Well, and also here we wrapped up Falcon and Winter Soldier last Friday. What'd you think?
Well, I'm still. I watch it with my son. We're 2 behind. So
okay, all right. What do you think so far?
I mean, there's a lot I like about it. I don't know. I want to watch these last 2 before I really understand what I was watching. I love the John Walker stuff. I think that's all been great.
Yeah,
I really liked that, and I liked that the Kurt Russell's kid who plays him. I like.
I have a good friend that I went to high school with. Jim True Frost is his name. He's a really good actor. And I, at first, when I saw Russell's kid, I'm like, and I love that his nose is a little bit bigger. It almost purposely, you subconsciously, I was like, I don't like that guy. And then when he had his mask off, his face looks a lot more normal. But he looks just like my friend Jim. Jim was in Affliction with James Coburn and Nick Nolte. and he was in the Hudsucker
Sure.
Proxy. He was the elevator operator in that.
Cool.
And he's in Singles, great Cameron Crowe movie. But yeah, it's funny. The more I watched Russell's kid, I'm like, God damn, he really looks like Jim. That's pretty amazing. And Jim looks great for his age. Jim's immortal. He looks much younger than me. Good for him. That's all he should. But I liked it.
My son loved it. I mean, it blew his mind when I told him like that's McCready's kid from the Thing, because he loves The Thing. That's one of his favorite movies.
How old's your son?
He's 15.
Oh, that's great. There's a good age. Absolutely, man.
Yeah,
cool.
That's a good age for The Thing. He and I have watched some classic movies this year because at some point I realized like, oh shit, movies are getting ruined for my kid by memes, right? It's not even like seeing the movie, it's like seeing memes of it. So I'm like, shit, like I got to start showing him stuff before it all gets. So we watched Godfather 1 and 2.
Great.
I told him like, we'll give it a beat before we talk about 3.
Sure.
We'll get to that one eventually, but we'll sit on these for a while. It was interesting watching I hadn't watched them in years. And I've said for years that, that Godfather 2 is probably my favorite movie. Watching them again, I like 1 so much better. I don't know if it's because, you get so much Sonny, you get so much Vito, like there's so much more family, and like seeing what you have and then what gets lost is different than once, in the second one where it's always kind of just, Michael becoming more and more of a monster. But watching that, I've always loved that scene, when Michael with the busted jaw, the first time he starts talking about like, figure out where the meeting is, plant the gun, I'll kill him.
Yeah.
But I've always loved that scene, but it's actually the couple scenes before that struck me this time of, when he goes to the hospital to see Vito and realizes there's no guards there, and he's like, oh shit, they're going to come kill him. And he pushes him into the other room. Is that moment Vito kind of wakes up and Michael tells him like, I'm here, Pop, I'm here. And to me, I realized like, oh shit, that's the switch flipped right there, right? Like he's not just saying, I'm here for you in this moment, Pop. He realizes my brothers are all a bunch of screw ups and they're going to get you killed. Like I'm the only person who can take care of this stuff. So I realized because you right after that you get that scene where they're out front, and the guys drive by, and the baker's kid is all shaken, and Michael realizes he's not. Like that realization is like I'd kind of driven past that before, but this time I was like, oh shit, like that switch was flipped before he got to that bit where he's talking about shooting them in the restaurant. So sorry, that was a long Godfather tangent, but I like that idea of when you go back and revisit movies and they strike you in completely different ways depending on the age you are. Like another one my son and I haven't watched yet, but we'll get to is The Exorcist, which I love, which has always been one of my favorite movies. As a kid, it scared the shit out of me, right? Like that was terrifying. It's the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. I remember my sister turned it on one time when I was little, and I fucking freaked out because I was like, oh my God, that is horrifying. And that was the way I was for the longest time, because I also grew up, Southern Baptist, and I believe this. It's like, this is documentary, like this can happen. So eventually I grew up, I kind of lost that faith part of it. It didn't, watching it, like when they re-released it, whenever that was that like 20 years ago?
Crap walk on the stairs. It's like, holy fuck, that disturbed the shit out of me. Just even that in the trailer, I'm like, nah.
Well, I loved it. I remember going to see it then when they re-released it. It's like, oh, I still love this, but it doesn't, like, I'm not freaked out. It doesn't, certainly not freaking me out like it did then. It didn't affect me in that big a way. So then I saw it again like a couple years ago on cable, and it freaked me out in a completely different way, not from the religious part of it, but there's that scene when Ellen Burstyn goes to see the priest and she's like losing her shit because it's like something is wrong with my kid, and I'm going to see everybody and nobody will help me. And that, like watching it for the first time as a parent, like, oh, I was like, oh shit, like that struck me in a way that again, seen it never affected me in that way before, but now it's like imagining myself in her position, and you're like, oh yeah, fuck, you're desperate to like, yeah, this is a demonically possessed monster, but it's your kid. You just want to help your kid. So I was not prepared for that at all. How much that was going to freak me out watching it. So it's like the stages of my relationship with that movie have changed so much over the years. So I like doing that, going back and revisiting the stuff to see like what's going to strike me now that's never struck me before, of something I've seen multiple times over the course of many years.
That's what good art is supposed to do, man. And I've heard Ebert, before he passed away, go on about how La Dolce Vita hit him in different ways as he grew older, and realized as he got older that guy was such an idiot, and then really kind of just, again, too immature and everything. But, when he first saw it, was just like, oh my God, this, what a life. And God, if only I could lead that kind of life. And Jose wants to point out that reading Scalp, you can see the Godfather influence in so many ways. Love it.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of Deadwood in there, and the Wire, and what else? Crime Story. You remember Michael Mann's Crime Story?
I own the DVDs. Of course I remember Crime Story. Absolutely.
I love that show. I mean, that's when Will Dennis, who was my editor on Scalps, he and I first started talking about stuff. Like, I was doing The Other Side, the Vietnam War book, and I pitched him some other things, and one of them was Scalped, and we started talking about crime stories that we like, just kind of the crime genre in general. But in particular, I talked about, well, two things. One, State of Grace, the Sean Penn, Gary Oldman movie, State of Grace.
Yep.
And two, Crime Story, because I love that Crime Story. You get like the rise of this cop and the rise of the crime boss he's chasing, and it kind of chases him through the different iterations. I mean, to absurd degrees.
Of course.
But oh my God, I loved that show so much. I haven't watched it in forever, but I think last time I watched the pilot. And just that opening scene when Dennis Farina, like, these guys are robbing some kind of fancy restaurant or party or something. But he like leans in the car to the guy, and he's like, "You hurt these people, I will find what you love the most, and I will kill it." And that's like his first introduction to this guy, and the first introduction to the face of Dennis Farina, who, like, one of the greatest faces in TV and cop movie history.
Absolutely, man. No, I he's a Chicago guy, obviously. And,
he was like a real Chicago cop, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, and knew those real guys that work the patch, that area of Chicago that a lot of the action happens in. And I got to know, oh goddamn, now I'm blanking on his name, John Santucci. And he was Ray Leo. He was Ray, the crime boss's. Big heavy set guy.
Oh yeah. The like kind of sort of dim-witted.
Yes,
he's the guy who takes him to hide out in the like the nuclear atomic blast.
Exactly. I met him a few times over the years. He would, where our Chicago sports station, a lot of the Chicago actors just like, wanted to air sports, so they'd come to our live events and stuff like that. And so I got to meet Santucci. I never got to meet Farina, but a lot of the score guys did, my fellow broadcasters. And I regret not having the opportunity to ask him some of his
I'm sure he would have been interesting.
Stories.
Yeah.
Well,
that Crime Story had a great cast. I mean, you get all those Michael Mann guys in it, right?
Yes.
Like Tom Noonan, wasn't Tom Noonan in there, and Ted Levine.
Yes.
Like all the, a lot of the guys who wind up in Heat.
Right, and Manhunter, and all that
Manhunter,
stuff.
Another Manhunter's on my short list. Haven't showed that one to the kid yet, but we were talking about serial killer movies, so I think Exorcist. Then I'm going to skip right to Exorcist 3. We're not doing Exorcist 2. That's terrible, but Exorcist 3 is really good. Have you ever seen Exorcist?
Oh 3? Yeah, absolutely.
It's a really good movie.
I can't remember his name now. Playing
George C. Scott, right? Isn't it George C.
Oh,
Scott?
no, am I thinking of I was thinking of the one with Sam Neill.
Oh, you're thinking of The Omen?
Oh, that is The Omen. Of course, that's The Omen. Yes.
The Exorcist
I
3
don't
is
know
written
if
in.
Exorcist 3 with George
It's written and directed by William Peter Blatty, the guy wrote the book, and it's based on.
Sure.
I think his sequel was called Legion, so it's based on that.
Oh wow.
George C. Scott is a cop who's like friends with this priest. Where The Exorcist is, you get the creepy possessed child. In 3, you get creepy possessed old people.
Oh wow.
It's really, really good. Like, I like it a lot. It's one of those, like, people either haven't seen it or they've seen it and they're like, oh yeah, shit, I got you. There's a couple scenes people we'll talk about them next time. Everybody should go watch Exorcist 3.
All right, you've given me an assignment. I'll have to remember to do that. That's great. Jace, as always, I thank you for hanging out, and I look forward to when travel becomes normal again, because I have a little more freedom in my schedule, and I would love to go to Planet Comic Con and see all my KC guys and everything. And
come on. I think I'm pretty much not doing any cons this year, but next year I should be back at it. But at least doing some. I miss conventions. Like, I miss hotel bars at 2 a.m. full of comic nerds and comic creators. I actually miss all that. So
sure, you were at Chicago for C2E2, right? In 2020 or no?
No, I was there.
You were there
before that, a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
I went a couple of years in a row there.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I mean, I'd see you at 2 a.m. at the bar. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
Eating pizza.
No, definitely, man. I'm well, and I understand. Have you had all your shots yet?
Yeah, I'm all vaccinated.
That's
all
good
to go there.
I'm getting my second one on Thursday.
Cool, good for you.
God. And I cannot wait to swim, Chase, because I'm a fucking moose.
Swim?
Yes,
yeah?
I'm a mailbox. I am so wide, it's sad. And I gotta drop the weight. I got a title fight coming up. I got to get back in shape.
Oh yeah, well they fighting Tyson? Are you coming out of retirement?
God, did you get that? Him and Jones? Did you see them fight each other?
I did not.
I've
been watching him on AEW though, on wrestling.
Sure. Oh, that's hilarious. You should Art and Franco, the Tiny Titans guys, man. You should sit down with them about AEW and everything.
Are they big wrestling guys?
Oh, absolutely. And they really are good friends with Chris Daniels and Frank Kazarian and everything. And
really?
I don't know how well they know with the third guy. I know that they're part of a trio now, or they were part of a trio. I don't even know.
Yeah, Scorpio Sky. He's on his own now. He had a heel turn.
Oh,
he's great though. I love AEW. I love all those dudes.
That's awesome.
I think the last time I was at C2E2, I'm never one of those guys who like tries to pull strings of like, hey, I really want to meet such and such. But was the one time I did that to meet the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and all of the AEW guys who were there. I was like, cool. Could you like let me meet those dudes? They were all super. I didn't have any idea who the hell I was, but I was happy to get to nerd out on them.
Chris Daniels is a massive comics fan, and in fact, he and Frank did a comic with Art and Franco where it starts off with fumetti and photographs, and then they go into the comic book world, and Art draws them and stuff, and it was a very cute story that they put together and everything, and it was great. I was explaining fumetti to Chris Daniels. He had never heard the phrase. And I explained to him what it was and stuff. And it was great. He's like, well, this fumetti, as you call it. And I'm like, yeah, man, that's like a decades old.
Right. Sure.
Okay. Sure. It's mine. I invented it. How do you do?
Yeah. There's a big wrestling comic book crossover.
Oh yeah.
I found.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Azzarello and Jill are massive wrestling people as well, which
sure.
And the wrestlers love the fact that they love them and everything. That kills me. Absolutely kills me. So yeah, man. Well, congrats. I'm really excited for Heroes Reborn. Again, here's some of those. We'll throw up some of the images again before we say goodbye. Look at that. I'm looking forward to Peter Parker as kind of Hyperion's Jimmy Olsen. Am I right? Isn't Mark Russell doing that story?
The tie-in. Yeah. I'm not sure who the team is on that one. I haven't read that one yet. But yeah, we see Peter Parker in the Hyperion issue. it's like it's Heroes Reborn #2.
Okay, that's cool. And here's the young Squadron that Zub's going to be doing. So that's cool. Looking forward to that and seeing again how these heroes were, inspired by, as opposed to the Young Avengers, how they're inspired by Squadron Supreme. So lots of really interesting ideas, and I love this shot of Doom. That's great.
Yeah, well, you'll get the idea what's going on there in Heroes Reborn #1.
Very cool. That's great. It only starts in a week. A week from
next week. Yeah.
So that's excellent, Chase. No, it's and that's great. And then back to more Avengers stories for you and Epic.
Yeah, more. I got a lot of stuff coming up later this year, so we'll have to do. We won't wait so many years to do another one of these because I've got a lot of stuff I'm actively working on that I just can't talk about yet. So
no problem, man. Well, we'll make
come
time
back. We'll come back and talk about all those.
That sounds great. Wait, let's see if there's one more question. Oh, pardon me. Was it Mark Bernardin that's going to do? Yes, of course. Thank you, Zach. He's doing the Peter Parker
Cool.
as Jimmy Olsen's story. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate that clarification. Well, everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Hang out for a second, Jace. Word Balloon Live. Tomorrow morning, Rob Paulson, the great cartoon voice actor who has been everything from 2 of the Ninja Turtles to Pinky of Pinky and the Brain and Yakko of Animaniacs. Looking forward to having him on. And also Wednesday, I'm recording. I've got a few things that I've pre-recorded. Dan Slott, Garth Ennis, who I spoke to earlier today. And on Wednesday, I'm recording a conversation with Ed Brubaker. So all that's coming up. So while I am dealing with my second shot, and hopefully I'm not all fluish the next day or even the day of or whatever, I kind of wanted to protect myself and get some cool people to talk to. And you'll be able to enjoy that in the days ahead. So I hope you'll stick with me as always on Word Balloon Live. Thanks a lot for watching.
Tell Ed I miss him.
I will. I promise you I will. Absolutely. Everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.